How are you tonight? Oh, I can't hear you. There we go.
Can
Did
you
you
hear
have a
me
nice
now?
weekend? Yep. Did you have a good weekend?
Yes, I did. Did you?
Awesome. Did your college team play football?
Yeah, they did.
And how did we do?
WVU did well. They won 17-16.
And who'd you all play?
Kansas State, I
Uh-huh.
believe.
Fabulous. Does the town go crazy when you guys have a game? Does the town go crazy when you have a
Okay,
game?
very much so. We used to be one of the #1 ranked party schools in the country.
Is
Such a good reputation to have.
I guess so. I haven't thought of it that way, but wow, good for you. Let's see if I can move this over. There we go.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, Someone else sent out a link, like basically like what you sent for the Make Loveland. And I
Yeah.
was looking at the properties. Do residential properties, like the property line is set back from the street and the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay.
Usually, Mariah, the street front property line
Hmm.
for commercial and for residential is around 1 foot inside of the sidewalk,
Okay.
which is also which means that if you I may have to draw this, but if you had a you're not going to be able to see this because it's too light. Oh my goodness. You're never going to be able to see that. Anyways, this napkin is not taking the ink very well. Usually the property line on the street for a house or a residence is 1 foot in from the sidewalk.
Okay.
That property line is also one half of the so-called right-of-way. So if a street has a 60-foot right-of-way, for example, if Marston or Euclid or Chandler or Smith, one of these streets had a 60-foot right-of-way, that means from the property you're looking at,
Hmm.
that street property line, to the center of that street, it would be one half of the 60-foot right-of-way, right? 30
Okay.
feet,
Makes sense.
right?
Yeah.
And it would be another 30 feet from the center of that property line to the property across the street from you.
Okay.
So the 60-foot right-of-way is a no-fly zone for development or improvements for a commercial business or a homeowner, because that land is used by the city for their purpose, for their use. So replacing utilities or upgrading sewers or water lines, gas lines, tearing up a you know, a gas line because it's leaking, for instance. All of that stuff can happen without permit because the city has the right of that way to do that work. You as a property owner, however, must mow the lawn in front of that, in that right of way, and you must shovel the walk and keep the walks clear of debris so that business as usual can occur. But you don't pay for that land. You don't own the land in front of that property. The city owns that land.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then usually, in the case of the lots where you have an alley, usually the rear property line is to the center line of the alley.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that you own one half of the alley and the neighbor behind you Rear to rear owns one half of the alley, unless the alley has been vacated. Right? And if that's the case, then the city owns that land, and they have to keep up with it. And so I don't know what the deal is in your neighborhood. Some of the stuff you never know until you have a survey. Quite honestly,
That's what I was figuring. The little quirks of residential
right?
code and zoning and all the property lines.
Goober on my glasses. I'll be right back. I'm going to get a towel to clean my glasses.
Okay.
Okay. Was there anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Hi, Judd. How are you? Nathaniel, how are you?
I'm good. I will switch to my computer at some point.
No problems.
Once I get started.
No problems. Hey, Zach, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine. So Zach, we were looking at Trumbull Street last week for the container project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it does not show up on Street View or on the aerial view under Google, but it's been there for about a year and a half already.
Okay.
So it's at Trumbull and Pine Street, which is the first street north of the freeway. So if you're ever out this way, that's where that container project is.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And you can look it up on Curb Detroit.
Okay. I will check that out.
Okay. Okay, we're going to get started.
Mateo emailed and said he is not going to be able to join tonight.
Yeah, and I just yelled at him, so he knows.
Okay, I didn't know if you were included on that email or not.
Yeah, I told him the first rule of my studio, no kidding, was don't get sick. And what did he do? He got sick. Okay.
I think he's breaking both your rules then, because he's traveling too.
He is. He's going through a major life change, and that's not going to bode well for him. Let's see. What am I doing here? I'm trying to close this. Okay, I found it. Why is it not coming up? Okay, can you guys see that?
I see the mountain.
That's not good. Why is it not showing? No, that's not it. Why is it not coming up on... There it is. Now can you see that?
Yes,
Strategies for redevelopment?
correct.
Okay, so tonight I'm going to run through a current project in our office. This set of plates is about 1 year old, and I think there are some nuggets in it that I want you all to appreciate from the perspective of like research and how our office goes about explaining a project that has a lot to say and a lot of responsibility embedded in it. So this is our work for Brush Park. And I talked a little bit about Brush Park when I gave a talk at Lawrence Tech about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but I really didn't get into the project. I just showed some of our work. And we actually have 2 projects in Brush Park. This was really for the first project. So, I'm just going to go through this kind of briefly, but I want to get you guys acclimated again to the graphic. I want to get you guys acclimated to a graphic package that tells a difficult story, a complex story, layered in with the sort of notion of historical architecture and the response of our firm to that historical context. So I don't want to read the plate, but I'm going to let you sort of linger on it, and you can appreciate some of the language that's in this particular plate. And you'll notice that it brings out the M1 rail streetcar, and it talks a little bit about how we're trying to make a new neighborhood where, quite honestly, one does not exist right now. There are only about 10 or 12 historic properties left in Brush Park, which was arguably the most important historical neighborhood in downtown Detroit. And the properties that our firm was dealing with included 4 of those 12 historical heritage properties, and they've already renovated one of them as part of the initial sort of work. And so this is kind of a document that talks a little bit about the master plan. Again, notice the graphics, notice how succinct the language is. There are 4 major purposes of this plan: to promote the community's vision, integrate active plans and development, provide the city with recommendations to make changes, provide developers and property owners with development expectations. No surprise here, right? The context of what we were studying is in Southeast Michigan. It's in Wayne County, and it's in the greater downtown, and it's located within the 7.2 miles of the sort of core downtown neighborhood. And these simple graphic sort of applications, I think, bear that out. Similarly, an aerial plan from like Google Earth is brought in, lightened up, and then highlighted with certain key assets identified, along with the Brush Park boundary, which is the property line that you see in black here. So the CBD is the dense area downtown. The arena district is where, of course, the Red Wings arena is going to go. Midtown, you know it as Midtown. I know it really as Cass Corridor, which is at the south end of Wayne State University. So you and I are looking at this from the north, and M1 rail runs right down Woodward Avenue, which is right up and down the middle line here. The medical center, the DMC, the Detroit Medical Center, is to the left, and the Arts Center, where we have the library, the Art Institute, right, CCS, Peck Park, and all of those areas. The Science Center itself is all located along Warren, which runs east and west right here. Eastern Market is on the other side of the freeway, so I-75 is running south here, and it doglegs around Brush Park. It hugs Brush Park and begins to make its western run towards the bridge, which is located somewhere off of this page. All right. History is a very difficult thing to talk about in very few words. The timeline is often a very attractive way for us to denote that. You know, talking about Brush Park from the very early sort of dates of 1806 to 1900. And as you've heard me say, this was where Detroit's wealthiest lumber barons lived. So clearly the Brush Park neighborhood was within a long walking distance, but probably a horse and carriage ride into downtown. Now, of course, this is during the era of the Civil War and post-Civil War. So that's really when Brush Park was formed. And then it added significant changes along the 1900s to 1960s, allowing for maybe a more blended and pluralistic approach to housing. And most of that inclusive housing happened in the late 1950s and 1960s when the freeway came through, which displaced lots of neighborhoods along Hastings Street. Hastings Street, of course, is I-75. And that, of course, was where Black Bottom was located, a very much a stable but Black community in Detroit that was erased, if you will, in order to make room for I-75. Also in the early 60s, the late 50s is when we saw the freeway come in, 1950 to 1960. 1963 is when we see the Brewster Towers project, which have been demolished. That's the lower image here. Those come online. This was urban renewal. This was the idea of introducing housing units that are stacked so that you can create density and neighborhoods on each floor, neighborhoods in the sky, as Allison and Peter Smithson called it. And there were several of these towers right at the turn of I-75. And the idea was to put it very indelicately, move them there. And I'll just leave it at that. By 1973, however, Brush Park became an historic neighborhood. And by 1990, Brush Park really adopts the first urban renewal plan in terms of changing of the zoning. And then in the 2000s, the Comerica Park and Ford Field are built really in that neighborhood just south of 75, 375, and Woodward. And that was, of course, all of Brush Park. But you can see that from this quick timeline, you're able to cover a lot of historical terrain in very simple words, very clear images, and with a graphical timeline. So this plate that doesn't talk about history, it talks about land, and it talks about the relationship of publicly owned land in all of Detroit. And the snapshot here is very compelling. When you look at Brush Park in the center, you can see that most of Brush Park as we know it is all owned by the city, which means that it's owned by the public, right? It's owned by all of us, which of course is a problem because that money, that land is not generating money for the city. And with 58% of Brush Park being owned by the city, that means only 42% of it is owned privately, which is everything else on that map. We talk a little bit about the constituents and the stakeholders of Brush Park. There has been, as you know, some appreciable renewed interest in Brush Park as a community, but it's really borne out in the population. It has, in actual fact, gone down since 2000 over the last 16, 15 years. The age has gone down, which is significant, and the median income has actually gone up. And you can see from this statistic that there are about 11.3 residents per acre, or 11.2, or 20 persons per acre is the goal. This is around half of what the standard goal for density in urban centers is. I think another statistic that indicates this transformative nature of Brush Park is the number of college-educated individuals. That is increased really, really significantly. And yet at the same time, the percent in poverty has increased, which is kind of a bizarre nuance of this transformation. These graphs, I think, show things very clearly. At the bottom of the page, the number of units built per year. So obviously in the 1940s, right around the time of World War II and before, there were 313 units. We didn't really see anything like that until the 2009, when we saw 413 residential units. And our firm actually had a lot to do with that. But there's been kind of a fall off. There has not been any new product since 2010. We didn't see anything in 1970 either. So it has been a very flat territory that only has, again, about 7.3 units per acre, and 20 is the number we're looking for, vibrant, walkable, safe urban neighborhoods. There's also a startling statistic here. There's 74% renter occupied and 34% vacant. 26% are owner occupied, leaving 66% totally occupied. So there's still a huge gap. It'd be interesting to see how North End compares to this. So this is a way of another way of looking at Brush Park, parcel by parcel analysis. This is something that we do a lot. We look at the properties that are there. It's rated in terms of, through some sort of lens. It gets a negative rating if it's vacant. It gets a red color if it's vacant. It gets an underutilized value if it's underutilized, rather. So it gets an orange color if it's that way. If it's occupied and basically not kept up or not improved, then it's not maximized. If it's kept intact and it's renovated and it's thriving, then it's maximized. So there's like 4 different ways of rating or ranking properties, and you can see that the number of properties that are maximized is far less than the number of properties that are vacant. So these are sort of vexing problems in the urban centers in Detroit. Here are those same lenses again, and here we apply some value to those conditions: maximized, not maximized, underutilized, obsolete, and vacant. And you can see those threats. None is present when it's maximized, but if it's vacant, it has low walk appeal and it's unmaintained. The approach to the vacant properties that have a negative impact might be to look at them as a blank slate and something that has the opportunity for new development. If it has even a not maximized ranking, it might be because it has historic preservation that needs to be dealt with, or it might be an opportunity for infill. I'll share this with you all as we move into the at the end of the lecture. So this is an aerial view of the Presbyterian Villages, which is that L-shaped building in Brush Park. It's one of the few things that was built in the 1990s. I call it the OPP. It's an old people's prison. It's a 2-3 story L-shaped senior center that has a fairly noble thing going on about it, because it tries to line itself up with Brush Park on one leg and the cross street on the other. So it's trying to hold the urban edge, but it's one large building in a kind of clumsy traditional vocabulary. One thing we find that whenever we see architects doing work that is attempting to appear as if it's been there forever, is that generally it ends up looking like it shouldn't have been there at all. And so the challenge, I think, to make something look historical was missed by the builder and the developer, and I guess the architect for this development. With a fence, with an iron fence wrapping around the entire parcel, it earns, I think, the understandable moniker of a prison. It doesn't connect or engage the municipality. It doesn't become part of the neighborhood, with no shops, with no retail, with no parks. It's not a place that, even if I'm 70 years old, I still, for instance, plan on playing golf. I don't think I have to like sit in a bed all day long for the rest of my years. So, it makes certain assumptions, this Presbyterian village, about how people live and how older people age in place. And it does it with a very large footprint and produces low density. It diminishes street activity because it's all closed off from the fencing, and it has low walkability because no one can get in and no one can get out. It doesn't connect to any of the amenities or services, transit, or even any social opportunities. My goodness, you can't even leave the Presbyterian villages to crash a tailgate party to watch one of our pitiful Lions games. So the conclusion from all of that is to sort of document what can happen in the 7.2, maybe build on that change of demographic, build on the opportunities that exist there, particularly in greater Detroit, greater downtown. And since Brush Park is strategically located between the CBD and Midtown, and because it's also on the M1 rail line, it's clearly earmarked to be a transit-oriented development. So this kind of statement, you guys, gives you an idea of how to frame up or tee up your research. This plate begins to take into account all the different kinds of partners that developments like these need to include, not only the planning staff and the city of Detroit, but the mayor's office. It needs to take into account the Detroit Future City Framework, the Brush Park Community Development Committee, Midtown Detroit, which of course is the Bank of Sue Mosey, the Downtown Detroit Partnership, the Detroit Innovation District, Eastern Market, the Medical Center, and the sports venues. When you start to sort of recognize, as architects and planners, as landscape architects, as developers, when you start to realize that all of these entities, while they have their own street addresses and their own phone numbers and their own leadership, these are actually the entities that you have to work with to get projects off the ground in Detroit. Again, this is a project in our office, so this talks a little bit about the idea of what are the sort of financial drivers, and certainly the employment of the community to build these things becomes in play. The active plans that are regulatory and non-regulatory are taken into account. The ones on the left are the regulatory ones. The master plan, the zoning ordinance, the Brush Park Urban Renewal Plan, and the design guidelines for traditional Main Street overlays. Then the non-regulatory ones are the ones that weigh in on and connect with the approval, but don't have any sort of actual regulatory say in the project, but they can swerve a project. And so I want to walk through these plates because these show examples from our files, from our research, of maybe the kinds of things that you can start documenting in your own work. Public space, density, transit, walkability, housing, and retail. And then these are examples that we have gone to over and again to show the communities where we feel like Detroit can be. This is Pearl District in Portland. It's a warehouse district, and today it's noted for its residences, for its businesses, and for its cultural assets. And it comes in at 21 units per acre. In Philadelphia, we get around 20 units per acre in University City. So the Pearl District is a good place to start. The University City in Philadelphia near Drexel is another good place to start. And those are like two solid case studies. This also begins to document all of the other things that are happening in the Brush Park community. This is obviously Woodward Avenue right here. And Brush Park is situated right here. In fact, the Brewster Douglas project that you saw the high rise of as number 7, that's right here. That's actually all gone now. But the M1 rail, the Arena District, the Brewster Rec Center RFP, which is number 3, Brush Park parcels A and B, which is the bedrock parcels that we've done. That is number 4. That's this area right here. Midtown Professional Building, the Loop, Brewster Douglas demolition, Addison Eatery, a fine restaurant. We were the architects for that building. The fire department lofts in Eastern Market are here. Whole Foods up the road on Woodward Avenue. Corolla, Carlton, Devon, and Lamar. Those are all apartment buildings in Brush Park, multi-story, high-density existing apartment buildings. The Edmund Place and Brush Park Manor, which is Presbyterian Village, which is this L-shaped parcel right here. Woodward Place, this is Bernie Gleiberman, so that's down here. And then the Inn on Winder is a very popular B&B, Airbnb, and 92 Winder also in that same area. And we rank them in terms of in progress or completed. The other thing that's interesting about Brush Park is it went through a major push to improve all of the streets, all of the sewers and gutters, all of the utilities, and they spent $19 million on it. And all of those improvements are completed, but all of the land is vacant except for the heritage properties. They went through a number of matching grant improvements for facades. They mothballed a series of historic properties in order to stop them from crumbling. The city acquired several properties since 1995, spending around $13 million, and they demolished several non-historic properties that were dangerous, spending considerable money doing that. Totally, spending a total of around $40 million in order to stabilize this neighborhood. Zimmerman Volk Associates is a very important market analysis company, and they of course looked at Brush Park, and one of the sort of things that they forecast is that there's perhaps nearly as much as 10%, 7% actual increase for housing in this community. The household type that they think is going to improve is singles, young singles without children, sort of your generation. And the preference for housing type is actually multifamily, not single family. So trying to understand what the market is telling you as researchers, as architects, is very important because it gives some credibility to the architectural response that you're going to promote in North End. And then, of course, the vision for Brush Park, you have to have an attitude, you have to have a story, a hook, and that's what we came up with here, a premier urban neighborhood where residents have the opportunity to meet all or most of their daily needs for high quality living, services and amenities, employment and recreation. You know, you don't have to be a premier neighborhood to have those things. In fact, every neighborhood should have those things. It shouldn't even be a neighborhood unless it has all of those things. And if you have those things in your neighborhood and you can do your business in 20 minutes, as Maurice Cox calls it, the 20-minute neighborhood, then you have the very likely possibility that you're living in a good place. The other vision is to provide a setting that is deeply connected, historic, sustainable, and collaborative. And the vision will be achieved by protecting and preserving, enhancing the qualities of the neighborhood so valued by residents, business owners, and visitors alike. So the idea that it's not just for the people that live there, but it's also for the businesses that set up shop there, that hang their shingle, and for those that come and go. There's actually new shops, there's new businesses opening in North End as we speak, and I think that goes to the sort of implementation of that vision. Talk a little bit about the amenities in terms of the kinds of basic needs that, you know, your neighborhood should have. You know, currently there are 0 retail establishments in Brush Park. This is about 3 years old, so this was before Grey Ghost opened up, for example. So the idea of, again, talking about things in graphical terms, amenities as a cup of piping hot coffee, urban form as a simple cube that shows connectivity and relationships to things around it, and then affordability, inclusivism, and pluralism as the form of a stack of money, and talking about how the priorities of the neighborhood and the stakeholders that are part of this community have expressed concerns for amenities, for urban form, and affordability. Again, currently there are 0 retail establishments in Brush Park. An analysis shows that 80% of the parcels in Brush Park actually have a negative impact. Sound familiar? Sounds sort of just like North End, for example. And based on form, density, and building or site conditions, the consistency with the neighborhood vision is really in peril. 41% of the residents in Brush Park are living below the poverty line. Sound familiar? So here's maybe a way of trying to find that appropriate blend of things that can get deployed in Brush Park. With the right kind of program or product mix, Brush Park will have both a complementary role and a distinct identity. I love the way how we parse these things out and break them into like simple themes that can become catch-alls for more fine-grained notions. For example, a complementary role and a distinct identity, right? Like Eastern Market is industrial and creative. The area north of Brush Park is cultural, educational, medical, digital, and creative, and so on, right? So there's an idea, Wayne State is historical and residential, right? And on and on and on. So thinking of a way of like branding the neighborhood in such a way that it helps to understand its identity, its brand, and its uniqueness. Detroit Future City Framework says that once unsubsidized market rate development is established, the focus will be on using development to reinforce the specific identity of each mixed-use district. And I think the mix is really important. The idea that you can't have, like we did in the Brewster Towers, a place for them to live there so that they don't have to meet up or run into us over here. The idea is that we blend things so that we produce a more plural and inclusive environment. Setting up of targets. I think this is really one of the most important maps. It talks about the sort of groundswell of density. It is configured along Woodward Avenue, or as we know it today, the M1 rail. And it shows the sort of glowing, burning centers that are both existing and still in dynamic state. New Center, which is up near North End, which of course is the Henry Ford Health Systems and the Fisher Theater and the former GM headquarters. There's Techtown just south of that. There's Wayne State University and the Art Center, and then swelling faster than anything I've ever seen is Midtown and the DMC. Brush Park is sort of spliced right in between Midtown and the Central Business District. And so it's kind of interesting that in this 3-mile run, like at every mile as you move from the river all the way up to North End, you have these sort of throbbing, glowing, swollen nodal conditions that are predicted from our research to produce over 7,000 residential units that will be absorbed in less than 5 years. And that density can be distributed in a number of ways. Those 7,000 units are probably broken down into thirds, like in the CBD, in Midtown, and then in outlier areas like Corktown, Rivertown, Lafayette Park, Eastern Market, Woodbridge, Techtown, and New Center. New Center could include North End, for instance. Another case study in Chicago, 21 units per acre, Wicker Park. This diagram almost looks like the drawing that Paralek did at Opticos, where he sort of talks about how a truly walkable community actually is not one typology spread around one large development, but that it is a combination of several different typologies to create variety, mixture, and inclusion. And that allows for pockets of like average density, like it's 16 units per acre, which might be like in single family townhomes, or 2-family units, which almost double the number of units per acre to 28, or in apartment buildings that push it north of 50 units per acre. And again, this is all, Wicker Park, if you know it, is only about half a mile from transit. Greenpoint in Brooklyn, basically it's flats, apartments above retail, or row houses. Again, the row houses are coming in somewhere between 20 and 28. All in, it comes to about 22 units per acre. Brooklyn is about 0.75 miles from the nearest transit. 4th Street in Detroit, a local example, is kind of an interesting one. It's almost 14 units per acre. It's about a half a mile from Woodward Avenue, and it shows a variety of units, 2-family units, apartment buildings, and single-family homes. Again, these are all excellent case studies for you. Germantown in Nashville, coming in at around 20 units per acre, just a quarter of a mile from apartments, showing a large apartment building, multi-story with parking deck kind of inserted in between the two legs. That's coming in at 90 units per acre. And then 1- and 2-family townhomes at a much lower density of around 8. And then carriage homes on the alleys are coming in at around 16 units per acre. And then Capitol Hill in Denver, again, a very large high-rise building that can provide a lot of affordable product at 8 stories, 128 units per acre, and then single-family homes at around 10 units per acre. All in, about a quarter of a mile from mass transit and almost 30 units per acre. So we began to look at the retail opportunities and talking about what kinds of retail spaces we might provide, how large they would be, and the rule of thumb for future density of around 3,500 residents is 20 persons per acre. This is the 20 units per acre, and it could support around 20,000 to 30,000 square feet of neighborhood retail. So this is not an Apple store. This is not a Target. This is neighborhood retail. This is bodegas. This is small cafes and bistros. This is barber shops and salons, dry cleaners, and the like. And that these should be located on the small-scale neighborhood streets oriented along priority pedestrian streets and public spaces. Another example of University City, sidewalks are associated with the thriving businesses where you can have outdoor seating. So the dimension of the sidewalk accounts for a very sort of attractive ambiance. We also promoted open space, which means that you have a place where people can relax and pause and linger. And so we donated, or didn't donate it, but we proposed open space in a fee in lieu of open space notion, where you have a sort of a smart approach to development by paying for the park in order to achieve things like more density or more units per acre. In Toronto, we have Duffer and Grove Park. It's a park that's run by the Friends of Duffer and Grove, so it's like a foundation that takes care of it, and they're always involved in its evolution and its program and its calendar, and it helps that park become its own entity. Talk a little bit about the sort of obligation that architects and developers had to have to providing affordable units so that all different types of people can live in these housing opportunities. We set aside, particularly in transit-oriented developments, around 20% at the affordable rate. In Washington, D.C., Adams Morgan produces a high level of social equity at around 37%. There's a very low unemployment rate. It has a high level of racial diversity. and that has been a fairly stable brand for that neighborhood. Cambridge in Massachusetts, where Harvard is located, has an inclusionary zoning ordinance that establishes requirements for low and moderate level income in any new development that has more than 10 units. And those units are required to be permanent. So they are always going to be low or moderate income. They can never like jump or trump the track or trump the sort of stakes. So this is a very interesting example as well. Talk about how to implement the goals, that collaborative approach again, and then talking a little bit about the DNA of the neighborhood in terms of where we should promote density, open space, and commercial uses. And then these are the drawings that we produced for that master plan. This is our plan for Bedrock Brush Park. It's a series of 4. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 small purple buildings are the historic properties. We did 4 large apartment buildings on the corners to hold the edges. We did the 2 largest buildings on the flanks. And we created a north-south running muse that connects the neighborhood to the north to the neighborhood of the south. But also we repurposed an existing alley and made it the front door for all of the carriage houses that front it here, here, and here. And that muse is indicated in this drawing here, the green swath that runs through it, and the historic alley. The alley helps to produce a walkable community, a walkable neighborhood. High walkability happens on the alley and on the short blocks. Because we feel like there's going to be retail there. The alleys are for access, so they actually allow people to drive and walk down them. The Muse is a pedestrian-oriented, no cars connector that integrates the sort of outdoor space and public space with landscape plantings, benches, lighting, and the architecture itself. We promoted, the issue of sustainability by introducing plant materials and stormwater management systems that sort of harvested all of the water, all of the stormwater development from the development into the Muse to help all those plantings grow and be sustainable. We even have an art program that we promoted for it. Vehicular access only happens off of the alleys. So you don't pull into the development off of the street. You only pull into the development from the alley and then feed north and south from there. That happens on both alleys, which are these 2 arrows here and here. So again, a very clear idea, again, thinking of the quality of a walkable neighborhood, the Muse as a network or a necklace of parks, thinking about accessibility, and again, how to document it, how to describe it, thinking about the alleys as a not just a thing, but actually integrated it into the storyline, locating strategic retail opportunities that make sense. Mostly they make sense on the same streets that you've got Brush Park, right, John R., where people are traveling north and south during the day to move from the north end to downtown and from downtown to the north end. Only located on the ground floor, only located on the corners. The setbacks are such that we encourage the architecture on the John R. and Brush to be right up against the building. So buildings on the north-south streets hug the property line. Mariah was just talking about that today. So these would have 0 lot line setbacks, Mariah, for example. And then where we have a street, we set them back a sort of more normal sort of front yard setback, because that's going to be more of a residential sort of townhome or carriage home type product. So they're set back from that property line by 10 feet. Not a huge lawn, but enough to create that sort of transition from private ownership to the public realm. The building heights also change, right? So they go from The highest buildings are on the corner. The second tallest buildings are on the east-west streets, and the carriage houses are the shortest buildings. So having an understanding of height as a strategy, not just an accident. Thinking of your user group, not maybe just as designing for millennials, but thinking of a more sustainable user group, thinking of, you know, the trends that are happening in North End that is clearly young singles that are requiring, you know, 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, but they're also snapping up historic homes and flats. And they are also keen on renting, not necessarily owning, but also talking, because they're young, about things like car share, bike share, roommates, shared outdoor spaces, and a neighborhood park. Children that don't have couples and children or families that are maybe empty nesters, their prerogatives might be more varied. They might be interested in apartments, townhomes, carriage houses, historic homes, flats, and 2 bedrooms, because they're going to have kids that come home, or they're going to have friends that stay over. These are typically individuals with a little bit more disposable income, and yet they want the same kinds of benefits like the neighborhood park and shared outdoor spaces, but they're also interested in assigned spaces for their cars because they have cars. Families are a little bit more complicated because they're dynamic, they're growing, they're changing, so they need more space, they need more private outdoor space, they're maybe more interested in for sale product, they need assigned parking, they need schools, they need neighborhood parks. And then thinking of people like me, retirees that are maybe aging in place, they are more interested in sharing outdoor spaces, yet having private outdoor spaces so they can be joined up with people like themselves. Elevators need to be in the buildings. They might want to prefer being on the ground floor. So apartment buildings that have first floor residential units and so on. And being close to retail and things like that, so they don't have to walk really far to get, you know, to the drugstore, to get, you know, prepared foods at the market. So thinking about your user group as a dynamic constituent that each has their own preferences, and some of these things overlap between one user group and the other, but thinking of this as a plural community, not just a specific user, I think would be useful. Again, a map that shows the various building types, apartments on the corners, duplexes on the street, also townhomes on the street, carriage houses on the alley, and then large apartment buildings on the dog ears here and here. And here's our renderings for one of those apartment buildings. And then thinking a little bit about those apartment buildings, not just in plan, but thinking of them just based on that cycle that we just talked about. Thinking of them in terms of stacked residential, with actually ground floor residential and active spaces that actually have retail in them or commercial spaces in them. And thinking about how the upper floors can have a set dimension of around 9 or 10 or 11 feet floor to floor, but maybe that first floor needs a 12-foot floor to floor or a 12-foot clear floor to have a viable restaurant or market use in it. And that allows for the first floor residential to be off of grade by about 3 feet, so that while they may be right on the zero lot line, they actually have some vertical separation from the hustle and bustle of north-south traffic and the residents in the community walking by. So thinking of how to design your building in section before you think of it in plan is probably a really good start. Also look at this drawing from another way. This would be the street right here. And notice how setting back at the uppermost floor allows for the building to read as a 4-story building, even though it's a 5-story building in actual fact, because from the street you don't necessarily apprehend the 5th floor, right? And thinking of the duplexes as a 3- and 4-story building is evidenced in this sectional drawing. I think this is a really good drawing from another perspective too, One, it shows that 3-foot raised base so that you actually have to walk up and step into the residence, but you can have 3 or 4 floors of residential above. And then maybe thinking of the parking zone not just as like an enclosed garage, but as an opportunity for a rooftop amenity like a terrace that could be for gardens, it could be for a patio, it could be for barbecuing, could have a pergola, so it had an outdoor room, or a hot tub on it if that's what you wanted to do. And the same thing on the roof of the duplex building. Again, a duplex is one unit in these 2 floors here over another unit in these 2 floors here. And thinking, you know, like if I wanted to live here, right, as a senior, I'd take the lower unit because I only have to go up 1 flight of stairs to get to like the bedroom, and the car is secured, and I also have the benefit of this rooftop amenity. But if I was younger and wanted more prestige and more view and maybe a rooftop like my neighbor, I could do something on the roof of the building and maybe take an elevator up to the top floor and get a better view of the community and pay a little bit more rent for that elevation. Townhomes generally sit right on the street. That typology goes back to the beginning of time in terms of urban settlements. These are usually side-by-side things, not just stacked things. So thinking of a townhome as something that you, again, step up into, and maybe the front of the building is the front door, the powder room, the stairway up to a main residential level, which is really the 2nd floor, with the garage tucked behind it, right? And then the bedrooms on the upper floor, and then maybe on a topmost floor, thinking of like maybe a master suite set back to create a terrace here, or maybe there's an opportunity for a terrace here, depending on the actual depth of the townhome. These are generally understood as for sale because the townhome is a stacked thing, and the idea that you're doing sound walls between units, I think it just tends to be more conducive to that. Plus, you can usually get 1 car per owner in a townhome. A hybrid townhome might be a little bit different. It's maybe where you put 2 or 3 units side by side in a chassis like this with a roofscape set back. The entrance, again, just like it is before, but maybe the width of the building allows for several cars to park within the building itself. In fact, that's what we're doing at Brush Park. We have a hybrid building that has 3 townhomes on the street, and then it has actually room for 10 cars inside. We park the 3 residences in the garage, in this enclosed garage, but we also account for the homeowners of the heritage properties next to us to be able to park in there. The carriage homes are my favorite. They're actually on the alley, which is, in this street view here where the car is driving up and down. The Muse is coming across at an angle here. You can see some of the program for art, wayfinding. The front of the carriage house is also the front door and the garage, and that cross section looks sort of like this. The garage and the residence are right really at grade. You pull into the garage and there's going to be 20, 22 feet depth for that, and then you have some of the living room and bedroom, or maybe the living room and kitchen on the ground floor. You take a stairway up to the 2 bedrooms, and maybe there's some sort of 3rd floor that has a guest bedroom or an office upstairs with a roofscape. Again, these sections help us understand the DNA of each of these buildings in a very clear, concise, graphically legible way. And all of this begins to tie back into the sort of research that we proposed. Okay, so I wanted to show you that because that's a real project, right? That's the Brush Park project that we're doing with Bedrock. That's the way that we went about portraying that research. That's the way that we describe the statistics, the facts, the partnerships and the complexity of the site and the breakdown of all of the architecture that fits within that. I think those section drawings and those aerial axonometrics are very, very useful to explain the approach to density and the variety of units per acre that we're able to achieve in that site. And then the section drawings begin to show an attitude about building height in terms of use, in terms of program, in terms of open space within the building itself, and how that might relate to the larger sort of storyline, all backed up with research based on, you know, parcels of or examples all around the country. So I'll share that on the drive for you all to look at, and you'll be able to look at that a lot more carefully, because I think that that's a really good example. And then I'll also show you soon the Brush Park project that we're doing just south of this Bedrock site. It's not as large, and we're designing all of the buildings in it. Just to be clear, we designed all the buildings in the Bedrock RFP response, but we're only one of 4 architects in the current scenario for Bedrock. We're working in collaboration with 4 other architects right now, and that's really, really exciting. We're designing the 2 largest buildings and the hybrid building, which is the neighborhood's smallest building. So I love that we're actually doing more residential product than anyone in the development, and we're actually doing the most affordable, which I think sort of fits in with our firm's DNA in terms of social responsibility. Those drawings, by the way, you know, we're in construction documents for our 3 buildings, so that's where that development is. You'll see this starting to come online in 2017, and I look forward to showing you all of that again. Okay, so that's your talk for tonight. Are there any questions about that? Again, I'll show you the next Brush Parks project. It's the one that's currently on display right now. Nathan helped me put that up on the wall with Mateo, and that's actually coming down shortly, I think tomorrow. So you'll want to try and take a look at that. And by the way, the Pellerin Traveling Fellows, Breck Crandall and Brian Bush, Brian, who works for me, are exhibiting their work now for their Pellerin Traveling Fellowship experiences. So that will be up from like the end of this week, early next week, until their lecture, which is in around 3 weeks. I think they lecture on Thursday the 20th. So if you're on campus or in town, I encourage you to go to that talk, because if you're nominated and you're selected for the Pellerin, you will have to give this lecture next year. So it's good for you to see what kinds of people are getting selected for the Pellerin Traveling Fellowship, and it's interesting to see what they did and where they traveled. I know Brian, for example, created an itinerary last August that got everyone's attention because she had proposed to travel to Cuba, and she traveled to Cuba last March, and she'll be talking about that experience. She traveled all along the island, meeting with several architects along the way, actually working within a charrette, and a very interesting agenda. And she'll be talking about that on the 20th. That's Thursday night. So if you're around, I encourage you to audit that. By the way, I do believe that Lawrence Tech is starting. They streamed my lecture, and my lecture's on YouTube. God forbid you have to watch that. But you can stream her lecture or look at it later on. So maybe that's another option for you if you're living in Fairmount or Kalamazoo or Grand Rapids, right? So that might be something to contemplate. All right. Any questions? A lot to take in. That's how we roll. That's what our firm does. Our firm does that stuff all day long. And I'll show you the buildings that we're doing. They're on display. Nate's already seen them. Mateo's already seen them. The buildings we designed and the buildings that the 4 other firms have designed are on display at Lawrence Tech. And I'll show you those. I'll show you those renderings. I don't think I have those here, but I'll show you those renderings when I do the other brush park project to link the two projects together for our next talk. All right. Any questions? So could one of you please swap with Mateo, because he's not feeling very well tonight, and I want to give him the ability to. I was teasing him just now. I hope he doesn't. I hope he's not really feeling that bad. He would appreciate if one of you is swapped. So who am I going to see first tonight? Great, thanks, Nate. I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Any other questions? Any other comments? Cool. You guys look like deer in the headlights. 3 weeks from tonight? Uh-huh. You have a lot to do. I hope lead's flying. That's how we used to say it, right? Lead's flying. All right, I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thanks, guys.
No volunteers for 8 o'clock. I can go 8 o'clock if one of you needs a little bit of extra time to work on something, and you can take 8:30.
I honestly don't have enough to do a desk crit tonight. I was planning on Wednesday.
Yeah, I need tomorrow to put some more stuff together.
Same with me. I don't have anything in a PDF form to show them tonight.
Yeah, either do I.
All right. I'll just talk to him for an hour then, guys. Thanks.
I mean, I guess personally for me, like, if y'all need to switch desk crits, like, if you can, like, say it by, like, noon, 2 o'clock-ish, so we have, like, time to put stuff together, like, I can usually pull that off, because I'm not working.
Was Mateo going? He was going tonight, right?
Yeah.
At 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, I know
planning
that-
on taking off about 8 to head home.
That's fine.
And I've got a feeling these girls are going to be done about 7:30 my time. So I know I couldn't make a full desk crit. That's my problem too.
I guess Mark will have to deal with it, and Mateo will miss a desk crit or something. I don't know. I'm sure I'll be fine.
Unless if Mark doesn't mind not seeing PDFs, just going through a Revit, I can show him that. I don't know if I'm going to make it back for 8:45.
We'll figure it out.
Okay, Nate.
All right. I'm going to start out. I'll share my screen first.
Good.
And let me see.
Got it.
Good. All right. So these were kind of the sites, or the extent of the site that I was looking at. And I started to kind of label them so I can pick them apart and then figure out, I guess, ownership and things such as that. So right now it is factoring to about 1.1 acres for the total site. And then what I started to do was look at property information for each of those, for each property that was in that 1.1 acre. So basically, who owns it, whether it's private, a land bank, public, while I guess the land bank would be public. Real estate owned, I found a couple of those, and those were interesting research topics. Youth Improvement Council. So kind of looking back at the properties, I started to color code not only what's on the site, but what's adjacent across the street. So quite a few of them are land bank owned, especially across Smith Street. And then there were a few privately owned scattered in, the real estate, and then the one nonprofit on the corner, which was the North End Youth Council, or that's who's paying the taxes on the site. I guess that's the information I have. So kind of looking at what the ownership status is, the tax status, and also the assessed value. Most of the properties without homes fall into like a $200 to $400 range for actual property value. So I guess looking at the site, that's kind of what I've put together so far.
So what kind of impressions does that leave you with? What kind of conclusions do you draw?
Well, I think a lot of it being land bank owned, I mean, there's potential that those will get developed on. Or the interesting one was the real estate. They actually have real estate developers. The one was Detroit De Novo LLC. So they own, or they're paying the taxes on the property, and they kind of have a partnership with, not really I guess the community, by making a kind of partnership between buyers and sellers.
Well, maybe, and so the lots in the black box are the lots you're sort of looking to sort of develop, right? That's really your site. So yep. Since the land bank seems to own most of the lots, who's the nonprofit again that has the purple lot? That's the Youth Council?
Yeah, that was the North End Youth Council.
What do you know about them? Anything?
I couldn't find much. The only thing I could find was a Facebook page on it. It looked like they did a lot of kind of sponsoring a child during like Christmas time. So they looked for families to sponsor the youth in the area. But other than that, I went out to a few websites to find. I mean, they are. There was a Detroit, like a North End website that they had a little like paragraph on them, but there wasn't much information past that.
Okay. Now that's frustrating, because I was thinking of, maybe there was a way that you could like look at all of the lots on Bethune, mm-hmm. South of the alley, as or even including lot 12, for example, but thinking of all of those lots as think of those lots as in play, so that you would be the developer that owned the P lot. The Youth Council is, in fact, an organization that you know a great deal about, because there's a website and you've met with those people, trying to understand them as a potential link or a partner in mm-hmm. the development, and trying to craft a development that's suitable for them to have you as a neighbor, or for them to grow into? Because the land bank is going to offer up for sale these lots 12, O, N, and M.
Mhm.
They're going to ask, their land bank will always ask for the highest and best use for that land. Right now, you may be saying, that those things are like 40-foot wide by 120-foot, 125-foot deep parcels that, based on current zoning, only allows for more single-family houses on it. But that actually may not be the highest and best use for that land. So maybe the land bank is really interested in seeing what you can do with all of those parcels to create something that is a much higher performing sort of development that works with that youth council, works with Brush, works with Bethune, even works with Dolores Bennett Park, and maybe with Muffy to the south, right?
Right. Yeah,
So
I guess
thinking
that was-
about what would your RFP response be like, and how would you go about like taking all of those disparate lots, 12, P, O, N, M, and L? How would you think of that as one bundled thing, right? And taking it from there.
Yeah,
Because I think if you
crossing over B and C might be, except for now, it looks like the house that's on B, it looks like that one might be gone too.
I think we learned that last week.
Right,
but we were talking about that, and I think we saw it in street view, but then we saw that it was gone in an aerial view. So I think C is gone for sure.
Yep. So kind of linking B and C over to O and N, and then how that might be an opportunity there too, just because that's land bank property.
Right. And again, you could be the developer in D and P, in David and Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But the private lot A may be kind of an obstacle. But the other thing that you can do in these scenarios, you guys, is to set up the rules of the game, set up your myth, and say that you bought that land. So I'm reading here, according to Loveland, B and C are vacant. Yeah,
Yep.
That's what we're seeing.
I think A's vacant as well. Is it 13?
Yeah.
13 has the private, but has a home on it. So that's really the only one left. Until you move towards John R. more, there's like 3 homes towards John R.
Right.
But yeah, I think trying to figure out what the purpose of L, or the youth council, what their plans are for development for that site. What would they use that land for? So,
well, again, I didn't know they owned that land, and again, I don't know anything about them, but you could create kind of a mythology here, I think, Nathan. You could say, I'm running into roadblocks, Mark, with the North End Youth Council. I can't really build a project based on a Facebook page. So would it be all right if I said in my scenario that the North End Youth Council sold that land to the Purple Heart, the Salvation Army, right, or some other user group that you might already be affiliated with, right, or be keen to learn more about, like the Gleaners Food Bank, or you can start to sort of spitball and say they bought that land and they are wanting to hire you, Nathan, to help them because you're the owner of P, right? And they're wanting you to go after O, N, and M and bundle your assets, their assets with the land bank's assets to make a whole thing out of it, right?
Yep.
So that could be a way that you sort of stuff that sausage in terms of like getting this thing to work out into a story that helps you to create a vision and a way of thinking of these things again as necklace together, not as individual pearls, but as one thing, right? I'm not saying that it has to be one building, but thinking of those sites as one development parcel and then letting the myth play out, right?
Right. Yep.
But you got to come up with that fast.
Right.
Are you really keen on working north of the alley? Would you have any problem like saying, I'm staying south of the alley?
Just south? I don't think so. Now that the homes are removed from, I think, A and B, I think it's less desirable. Before, when we had an infill lot like at A and B was assumed to still be there, I think there's an opportunity in A to develop. And then the only thing I like about north is it places me on two corners, like E, F, G, and H.
Yeah.
And L through N, having those two corners across from Bennett Playground. But that's not to say that if 12 through or L through 12 become successful, and you can then mirror or take that development and start to develop, expand it north. So there's always that future possibility.
Yeah, so let's keep that in mind then. Maybe what I'll suggest is that you focus on 12P, O-N-M, and L. And depending on how your sort of storyline comes out, and depending on what your response is to that site or those sites as one site, all south of the alley, maybe what you do on A, B, C, and D is more of what you're doing south of the alley, and it could be part of like the fully baked plan from the year 2021.
Yeah.
Right? Like lots 12 through L, that's going to be the plan for the next 2 years. But then for 2021 or 2026, 5-10 years out, right? Then this is what you can do with those lots. Create kind of a master plan out of it. So I don't mind you keeping the boundary of the black line the way you've got it, but I think you might want to reduce the footprint so you have a much more like tight and coherent storyline, or the ability to tell a tight storyline that works with something that is fairly reasonable, right? The land bank owns most of the land. They want to sell it. You're in line to buy it because you own the P lot, and they've hired you, Mr. Architect / developer, to help them, with the land that they just bought from that agency.
Right. Okay.
You don't have to do that. That's just the way I'm reacting to it.
Right. No, it makes sense that how it's laying out, to kind of react that way to it. So
where is that brick apartment building that faces Rush? Is that on I and H?
Yeah, that's kind of H.
Yep.
HK.
Wow, what a mess.
Two of them are owned by
that's a mess.
Detroit De Novo, and then the two are the J&K are privately owned.
Yeah, Nate will tell you that the one tall guy that was at the field trip the other day with us. Anna will remember him, the really tall guy. He's actually the property owner of that H, I, J, and K. Do you remember him? Anna?
Really tall guy. What did
Damien or something like that?
Was he?
He was on the roof. He was the one that when I took a picture of everyone, he was on the far left.
Okay, yeah. He had something about Detroit on his shirt, right?
That's right.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Like
Oh, so he owns?
He owns that building.
Oh, okay.
I think his name is Damien or something like that.
Is that like what did Tyson call it? The something townhouse? It's like abandoned or whatever. But
Yeah, that's the one. But I don't remember what he called it.
yeah, he had some funny name for it. It was something townhouse, and it was something implying that it's run down.
Yeah, well, he's snarky, so.
Yeah.
Do you remember his name, Nate? Yeah, okay. Let's go with Damien for now. But anyways, we met the dude that owns that, Nathan.
Okay.
And there was some Tyson, the farmer guy, was saying that there was some problem with his purchase of that land, again, because some of that land was private, some of it wasn't, and the DEG actually wants the title back, and he's still holding on to the title. He went into this whole elaborate, mixed marriage scenario that this parcel went under, and it's a mess.
Yeah.
It means what I'm saying tonight, though, looking from 12 to L, it means that building's maybe not in play. Or maybe the L institution wants to renovate that building. Here's another scenario for you or other people. Maybe that entity wants to renovate that building because it fits their need for housing and retail. And I'm just spitballing here.
Right.
You can create some sort of storyline where that gets woven into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to find out. And maybe it's a phone call to the youth council to.
Yeah, good luck. All of these
planning.
things are kind of like volunteers, and
Yeah.
you're probably just better off looking on Twitter or Instagram, or maybe finding out more about it that way, and certainly online.
Mm-hmm.
And what research are you doing? What area of research are you studying?
Right now, I've been looking at the kind of units per acre, and what. So I just started to go through some other neighborhood initiatives and what they're achieving for their density of development.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking at that.
But are you looking at missing middle? Are you looking at the zoning ordinance? Are you looking at Detroit Future City? What component of the class research are you owning, Nathan?
Yeah, I tried to. Another thing was the zoning. So I was looking into zoning.
Good.
Hard part about that is I went through like Municode, but that again kind of is just a real quick brush of what's actually out there.
Right.
I'm not sure if do you have to contact the city to get the zoning ordinance?
No, it's online.
Is that?
We have that in the. That's actually correct. We have some of that code in the research that the kids did last year. So at least start there to understand it.
Yeah, I'll look for that.
And ask your classmates.
That's what I was trying to own was the. I guess I was starting to look at the zoning ordinance. So.
Okay, good. Because you're okay. He's got a copy of it. So you're kind of a critical player because you have to tell everybody what they can do based on the current ordinance, right? So you need to get out in front of that, Nathan.
Yep.
Okay, and are you? So what else are you thinking about? What else are you sort of thinking of exploring this semester? Are you looking at? So yeah, we can go back to your unit layout if you want to do that. What are you trying to sort of appeal to here?
Well, this is I went back and revised the two layouts I had. So looking at the one bedroom, but I think looking into more like efficiency type units, because looking at the site I'm on, to get the density of, whether it's 20 units per acre, or if I want to set the goal a little bit higher to be 25 or 30, I think the units will have to become more efficient.
Right.
But yeah, I think developing kind of that stretch and trying to figure out what belongs there. So kind of going back and refining this, I was able to get the one bedroom. I got this down to like 325 square feet now.
Nice.
And there's still, it still seems like there's space to be, like the living room's fairly spacious. I even added a small desk because I started to think about the one bedroom who would, whether it's a nurse working long hours at the hospital, so just a small space for that, or looking at the single person, maybe trying to start a business, they might need a small area to kind of complete their work, so an office area.
So that's why you need a bedroom then, to separate the bedroom from the living room, right? To have a self-contained sleeping room.
Right.
I mean, I know that's what we all have in our apartments and in our houses, but in a 300-something square foot unit, that you actually have a corridor that leads to that bedroom.
Right.
And there's a lot of space there, and there's a lot of space in front of the bed,
Mm-hmm.
right? In order to allow that door to be there. I have a couple of schemes up my sleeve just thinking through that. For instance, you could swap the door into the bedroom if you had to have it, and create a linen closet or a hall closet, because you don't really have one,
right,
on the wall next to the lavatory.
Yep.
Or if the corner, I don't know if you can see me, but if the corner of the bedroom was actually barn doors that could peel away and open to the living room, right? So then that would maximize that space. So you wouldn't need a door at all, but it would be really part of a much sort of larger environment. That could be interesting. I think the kitchen feels right, but again, I don't think you have a closet, and the living room is actually cozy, and you have a corridor leading to the bathroom and the bedroom. That seems like a luxury. Also, I may be wrong, but it looks like the bathroom door is as big as the front door, but the bedroom door is smaller than both.
Smaller, yeah, that might be able to shrink up. Yeah, that was kind of where I moved away from the last one. The bedroom and the living room and the kitchen space all was kind of one. There was just a small wall that divided, the bedroom from the kitchen. So yeah, I think going back to that idea, or going back to that type of space where it's more open throughout, and I can probably get rid of a few more square feet out of it.
I mean, you could even do like a pull-down table, like in a motorhome, to create a table for dining at in the kitchen opposite the sink, or it could come out of that wall that's separating, right, the kitchen from the living room. it can come out of the wall like a book does, and just sort of hinge and lay down, and then flatten out, and then you could have some sort of table with 2 chairs on it. But that idea might work well for you.
Okay.
So I think this was a good thing to tighten the unit up, but I think you also need to think about what is happening on all of that site and what kind of strategy that whole site needs to have. If it's only half an acre, for example, can you get like 10 dwelling units, right? If 20 is like a good number, 22 is a good number, and you have half an acre, not a full acre, how can you get those kinds of unit per acre numbers?
Yeah. Well, right now it's kind of designed for 6, I would say, if you put a house on each lot. So just by getting to, if you did a 2-story, you could easily get to 12, I would think.
By doing 2 houses per lot, or by doing a house with a large accessory building or a carriage house. Correct. So that's a way of doing that. So maybe what you do is do like a double and triple and quadruple scenario, right? Draw the current scenario as if it's 1 per lot to prove that the lots make sense. Yep. And then a double scenario, like where you double the number of units, and then a triple scenario, and then a quad. And I think what will end up happening is that the lot lines kind of just evaporate, and it becomes one whole thing again.
Yeah, and I think
so it might be interesting to go through that exercise.
Okay, start to develop and plot the site now that we've limited down to those 6.
Yeah,
start to develop it.
Yeah, which is half an acre, right? So.
Yep. Yeah, it might be a little bit more, but not much. So that's when I started to kind of go into, I don't know if I can fit it easily on one. The 2-bedroom,
sure.
Kind of driving it from the 1-bedroom. And with this, I was able to achieve like my shared outdoor patio space, which I was keen on in the first exercise with the floor plans. So now the corridors kind of has multiple uses to it.
Right. It really starts to make sense in a 2-bedroom scenario.
Yeah. So yeah, I think by taking the 2 floor plans and starting to fit those into the site, and kind of where they make sense, whether it's a corner lot or
yeah, that'll be fun.
These come out to about 410 square feet per unit, not including the patio space.
How big is your house?
1,200.
Yeah, 3 times the size.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for people to grasp that, but I think, showing the furniture, showing the bed, all of that stuff makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I still can't grasp it, but I don't know if
one thing you could do, I think, you show like a twin or a full and a queen.
Yep.
So maybe the smaller bedroom is more like a flex room, guest room, office. And that's the room that actually doesn't have the sort of proper door with, a passage set, but maybe that's, a room that is, just at a flex space where a day bed could be in it, but there could also be a desk and a chair. And then based on your sort of scenario that you described, and then the living room could actually have maybe 2 nice chairs and a nice couch. with a coffee table, and it kind of has a little bit more of a living room ambiance to it. That might be worth looking at.
It seems like that would be more appealing. Something like this would be more appealing to, to the what we're finding or who would be occupying the area. Something in this type of configuration.
Yeah, because this is small. This leans more towards affordability, which I like.
Yeah,
I like for you.
Yeah, and I think for 100 and no, not even that, 60 square feet. So it was her 85 square feet difference. It's not much more, and you pick up an additional bedroom. But if I factored in the outdoor space, I think it'd be a little bit more. So footprint-wise, it's definitely bigger. But looking at the site, when you can fit a single-family house and this, you could probably fit 2-3 units on each site, and I guess that's a study I need to go through, see how many units I can fit.
Yeah, I think the other thing is when you start like looking at this as a unit and you start to deploy it on the site, all sorts of things are going to start creating a headache for you.
Yeah.
Front doors, the outdoor pathways to the front doors, the courtyard, the kind of light the courtyard's getting, because it may be facing east or west or north, So starting to like move from this ideal plan, and this is really something for everyone, to something that is more situational, right? That responds to the actual size and shape of the site and the energies of that site in terms of street frontage, alley, adjacent neighborhoods, or adjacent homes and so forth. So that'll be very interesting.
Yeah.
That's the step you need to take.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, that's where I'll start on.
Anything else?
Not in my PDF. Let me check.
I appreciate the lot research. That's, that's something anyone will have to go through. I would also have you guys look at the land bank, the Detroit Land Bank website, and help you understand. You can buy a home for $3,000 in North End right now, right? But that's not the problem, right? The problem is you have 6 months to bring that home back online. And that's going to take serious capital, contractors ready to go, right? You know what I mean? It takes immediate hustle. So, but how could the requirements of the land bank play into your scenario? How could you be a developer in North End, purchasing land from the land bank and make that work? Maybe your research, maybe your project this semester, Nathan, is the creation of a roadmap to help something like that play out.
Yeah. So by looking into restrictions or rules of the land bank, figuring out how to develop something on site, because looking at it, they own most of the vacant properties. So even north of Smith, they own that whole stretch of property.
That's right.
Along there too. So yeah, there's a lot to look at there.
And the whole idea of the land bank owning all of this property is really kind of curious, right? I mean, why are they hoarding all this property? Well, because it's potentially a walkable neighborhood next to the M1 rail. So they're acting in a way as kind of speculative developers. So that's why they're going to want to see the highest and best use, because when you come to them with that and it's got 22 or 28 units per acre in it, and you have a pro forma that helps them understand that this is going to generate a lot of money, right, for the community because of taxes and so on, they're going to want to sell that land to you because you've created the highest and best use response to an RFP that they might write.
Right.
So it might be interesting to kind of write the RFP, right, and then let that play out.
Okay.
And your project is kind of a response to that.
Mhm.
So you can think about that.
Okay.
Cool. You're welcome to stick around. I'm around this weekend if you have any questions. All right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. Who's next? Is that you, Anna? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll go over first, like what I've been looking at. I've been doing a lot more research than anything. Haven't had a chance to work too much on plans. I was playing around a little bit with like kind of small footprint micro unit. So I'll show you that in a minute. But I was looking into, because I know last week we were talking and you said look more into Muffy and look into in residence. I've also been looking a little bit into blue-green infrastructure, since that's something that came up when we were talking to Muffy. And in my research of them, they talked about it on their website. I wasn't able to find a ton outside of their website. They do have their Tumblr, and they had a couple of YouTube videos on them, but their website has quite a bit of information. And one thing that I thought was interesting was that they kind of have like these three main goals. They don't really say these are our three main goals, but they list them. They talk about education, sustainability, and community. And I thought it was pretty cool that, you know, we did our, like, I did my three, you know, humanity, sustainability, and beauty, that it aligned to some degree with what I was looking at. So they listed those three things, and then they talked about, you know, on top of that, all while focusing on those things, reducing socioeconomic disparity. So there's still the economic factor too, which I think all three of those other factors, you know, will definitely impact the economic status. They talked about Muffy being a, their words are to potentially develop a broader model for redevelopment for other urban communities. So I thought that was cool, because I know that's something you had mentioned, that, you know, this is whatever it is that we do, it could be something that could be replicated elsewhere. So it's cool. They're already thinking about that. They talked about increasing food security. That's something else that I've been looking into as well. I've started like very, very basically researching, looking at different, like looking for just grocery stores and food markets in the area. And there's, from what I found so far, there's not a ton that's within walking distance, for one. And even within driving distance, there's not a great deal of good food markets and grocery stores. You know, like the closest one, they call it a supermarket, but it's basically a liquor store. It's not really, in my opinion, a good food source. So so that was, I think that was interesting. That really helped to highlight the necessity of the urban farming initiative. They talked about cost competitive and scalable models for blight deconstruction. I thought that was interesting too, because that's, you know, that's where they're starting to talk about, like, I know he was saying like the blue infrastructure where they tore that one house down and they're putting the cistern in, and so they're looking at just beyond the farming element. They're looking at the urban element there. And oh yeah, and then innovation in blue and green infrastructure. And so, and I looked at, they have, let me see if I can, I don't know if I'll be able to screen share their site. Let me see if it'll let me. I don't know if it will. They have on their website, I'll somehow get it shareable for people, like just maybe a screenshot even of their site development and layout. And I thought that was really good because it helped to really see like the spread of where they are currently located and where they're planning on expanding to.
Mhm.
And I think my site kind of nicely nestles into what they're working on. So they've highlighted their urban farm, their community resource center, which is their that building that we were on
Right,
above.
the mural building.
Yeah. They highlighted their retention pond, the off-grid retrofitted home, something they called the intern house, which was like diagonally across the street on Horton and Brush. I don't remember him saying anything about that. I remember him talking about the people that lived there. So I don't know if that was an older idea that, I don't know. So I'm gonna have to look into that more. Yeah, there's one on the, well, there's the one.
Like 3 there.
Yeah, there's like 3, and the one on the corner they call the, unless I'm reading that wrong, it is kind of small, intern house. So I don't know. Or where is that? Oh wait, maybe I'm looking in the
Is
wrong
it the one
spot.
over near Beaubien with the green roof?
Now let me see. Near Beaubien. No. Now let me see. I think I might have been thinking it was in the wrong spot. I was thinking it was across from who was on Horton and Brush. That might be the one that was across from the where they had torn down the building and were doing the blue infrastructure. The one with like that cool, the one where they had the bees.
Yeah.
That might have been that might have been the intern house then. Okay, that would make, I think now that I'm looking at the map, that might be it.
Yeah, it's Brush and Horton. It's on the southwest corner.
Yeah, okay. So I was looking on the, I don't know what, I was looking at it wrong.
Have you thought of like if, like, let's say Tyson left the Muffy,
Yeah.
or maybe Tyson was your client. Have you thought of maybe like just embracing Muffy as a client and designing for, you know, their 2 square blocks or their 3 blocks, creating kind of a master plan? Have you thought about doing that?
To some degree, yeah, because I feel like what I'm
Because you
starting,
really have taken, I don't want to say an interest in that, but you definitely seem to be impressed by everything that they're doing, and I think in a positive way, right? And intrigued in how this might play out architecturally. Have you thought about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because I know I had talked about, you know, that one house that's on my site and how there's that vacant lot next to it and how that could be an expansion of Muffy, and not just the gardens, but as like a public, a space for public engagement.
Right.
I think that's something that they talk about. They talk about community. And when I was looking into the in-residence programs, I was looking specifically at artists in residence and trying to get some statistics on those. And one thing interesting I found about the artist in residence programs, it said that 90% of the artist in residence programs have public programs that engage the local community. So I think like starting to expand upon Muffy's ideas and incorporate, you know, what I'm, you know, the housing and what I'm trying to do into that, and having part of it be in residence and part of it be, you know, people who are living here long term that are, you know, members of the community. Maybe they're people who work for Muffy.
Sure.
Especially because my site is located, it's like butted up and kind of surrounded by what they're already doing. So, but I like that idea of expanding on and kind of developing at least somewhat of a master plan, because they've got a lot of different things going on. They've got their shipping container house too. I was looking into that. I thought that was pretty cool. So that's addressing, again, the sustainability and the economic side of things, and introducing a different typology of home into the neighborhood too, which I thought was interesting, because they all kind of read the same right now. So that's definitely something that I would be interested in. And I feel like, at least on a small scale, I'm already looking at that. I know, like I have the two alleyways. There's Horton, you have Muffy, Horton, and then you've got those two alleyways that kind of run parallel. And I noticed next to that turquoise house, there is a drive that actually connects Horton to the alleyway, and it's kind of like a natural access that connects, like, it could cut, jump across Horton and cut over to the gardens of Muffy and be, serve as a way to connect the two alleyways. And so, and then looking at, having the more public spaces of the housing units be along that access, along the, the Horton and alleyway, those parallels, but then also having it along that perpendicular axis too. That's kind of already naturally there. I'll do a screen share.
Go ahead.
So here, there's no labels on this because I was just starting to kind of like lay it out.
Right.
So this road here, I don't know if you can see my cursor. That's Horton there. This is, kind of the bounds of my site currently. The turquoise house would be in here, and there's a drive that's here. And then this is that vacant lot next to that house that I was interested in. And so, I thought, okay, if we just connect this through here, and this becomes, public space, and this becomes a public, a walkable public space. And then, you've got obviously still a pretty good sizable buildable space here.
And you're right up against the denser apartment buildings along the boulevard.
Yeah. So yeah, there's like that apartment building with the balconies that we saw that was somewhere in here. So, so I was just looking at, kind of pulling that Muffy's site, essentially pulling it through here and integrating the housing in, adjacent to it. So, and here's like kind of another little diagram. Here's that house, here's that vacant lot. And again, here's that access connecting, perpendicular to the alley and Horton. Definitely want to do some more developed diagrams and site analysis, but I think it was useful to look into Muffy and a little bit more, just above and beyond what Tyson had told us. And
yeah, me too. I'm glad you're kind of looking at that. I think that's a good place for you to be. Did you hear the conversation we had with him regarding Serenbe? Did you hear that?
Yeah, and you know what? I wanted to look into it and totally forgot about it until you just said it now. So I'm going to have to look into it.
Let me see if I can find a map.
How do you spell that?
Serenbe. I went there in July. And, well, I don't want to look at maps. I want to look at, so go to Serenbe Farms. serenbee.com. And on their page, so Serenbee Farms is the farming component of the residential community. And if you go to education on serenbeefarms.com, you'll see farm tours, apprenticeship programs, We Grow Farmers, and volunteer opportunities, right? But if you go to, if you just go to serenbee.com, and look at, and you look at that that web page, and maybe look into some of the like go to real estate, and then look at lease or own, and then go into like view available properties. You can start to look at the kinds of product that they're designing and building for. Now this stuff is, you know, ridiculously traditional, and it's also way, way, way expensive.
Oh yeah.
But I think it would be worth, or look at properties and like look at cottages, townhomes, that sort of thing, and you get a sense of the way they've handled the variety. But there's also a map, all properties. How does that look? No, that just lists them all. There's a, I have a map at the office, and I don't, well, maybe just go back to Serenbee and look at it under images. There may be.
Is it the map of available properties?
No, it's, I want you to see, I'm back at Serenbee. Okay, here it is. I'm going to try and screen share this.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
So this is a map, and it's just under Serenbee in Google, and you can begin to look at it. But basically, it's a series of giant hooks. Do you see those?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see my cursor?
Yeah.
So it's a street, and it just hooks like this. There's another one down here, and there's another one here. This is the full build out. Right now, only like this is built.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this is farming right up into it. Farming grows really, really deeply into the residential development. This is another map from a different neighborhood, right? This is called Honeywood Farm, but the architecture is around a green space, right? And the farms come right into the sort of development. So this is really kind of the interesting thing about agro-urbanism. Piedmont Park in Northwoods, another one of those examples, might help for you. Here's a good map of Serenbee. Again, the three hooks. Here's two of them, one of them here and another one up here. Might be interesting for you to sort of drill into that a little bit more and try to understand what the viable case studies are for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I meant to look at Serenbee because you had mentioned it on our site visit, and I wrote it down and just.
Yeah, I was totally knocked out by it. I had been wanting to go there for about 2 years. I saw Farmer Ashley on the 60 Minutes program, and she's the one from Troy, and you know, I now follow her on Twitter. It's all really, really an interesting thing. It's a really interesting place, but it's definitely a little Stepford Wives. It's definitely a little weird. Have you ever seen or maybe I mentioned this. Have you ever seen the movie called The Truman Show?
Oh yeah, with
Ed Harris and Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's filmed in Seaside,
Mm.
in the Florida Panhandle. It's a new urbanist development, and it's all filmed there. And he lives in a dome. That's the premise of the movie, and his whole life is filmed. Right, that's the movie.
Yeah.
But, anyways, the city he lives in the dome, is this like perfect world where everyone has a great day. There's never a cloudy day. Everybody's happy. Everybody gets along, right? It's a very unusual place, but it only becomes unusual to him the longer he lives there. And he starts to realize that it's maybe there's some deception going on. Anyways, Serenbe reminds me of Seaside, and Seaside reminds me of a movie called The Stepford Wives, where these wives always took a pill whenever there was like a siren, and it just sort of made everybody the same. It made everybody pliable and docile and obedient, right? Because that was our sort of version of relationships back in the 60s, I guess. Anyways, that's another worthwhile movie to look at. But Serenbe is an interesting place because it's aggressive in its effort to blend urbanism and density with agritourism and agriculture. And not just like, tying up roses against the fence, but bona fide farming, animal husbandry, right? Tractors, llamas, elk, you know what I'm saying? Like all of it, all full frontal agricultural sort of stuff. And yet we're still in the city of Detroit. And, and he said, yeah, my idea would be to like create Muffy to be Serenbe. I thought, well, you gotta own a lot of stuff for that to happen, and you're gonna have to have a lot of credibility. But yeah, that's what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, having at least a nugget of that,
Sure.
And I think like the thing that you point out about Serenbe is it is like just looking at images right now, seeing it's very idyllic, and
Yeah.
Not that that's something I wouldn't want for the people that live there, but it would be cool to approach it so that there's still the connectedness,
Sure. Serenbe is also a problem because it's exclusive.
Yeah.
Exclusive because it's expensive.
Right.
But it might be interesting to approach the North End as an experiment in connectedness, in authentic urbanism, in authentic agritourism, and ultimately maybe it's not just this site. You know what? Maybe, Anna, it's this site and the Muffy and the building that we went through. Maybe you take that site too.
Mm-hmm.
The Michigan Urban Farming Initiative building that we were in, and on the site north of it, and maybe just do kind of a J-shaped site, including the Muffy Farms.
Mm.
Not that you would build on it, but that could just be part of your sort of diagram. That might be worth looking at.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting, definitely,
Yeah, it would end up being kind of a giant L-shaped
Mm-hmm.
Thing, where at the end of my finger would be the Michigan Urban Farming League, and the property there would run across Muffy, and then it would run south back towards Grand Boulevard, kind of a giant L, and you just sort of are collecting properties along that necklace or that condition, and creating this network of urbanism and agriculture that is part of a much larger master plan. And you're only going to look at kicking off the renovation of the mural building and what that might look like. You could provide some housing in that, and you could provide maybe a roof garden on that. And then you end up doing kind of the thing you're thinking of doing on the lots that you've already put the boundary around.
Hmm.
But really, like embracing the farming initiative without embracing Tyson could be a very interesting thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I think, ever since I started looking into it, that's been just, I think, my focus, definitely, because I feel like that's definitely got some real potential in the neighborhood. Just seeing how much it's grown in the couple of years that it's been there, and how much positivity it's attracted, and interest and energy, I think it's really important. And so I see it, like being a garden community, a farming community, but still with the connection to the urban.
Right.
So I think, I don't know, that's definitely where I would like to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I definitely need to, I don't know, document. Right now I have a lot of research, but I don't have a lot of.
Can you show me the unit layouts that you did?
Oh yeah, let me screen share. They're so this is, I just started playing with, instead of doing just a traditional like rectangular, kind of having this little
zig and zag, yeah.
Yeah, having a little nook, and then seeing, you could get two kind of different floor plans out of it. It's definitely a lot more dense than the other floor plans that I was working with. Still definitely, there's still things that I don't, the thing I don't love is that with that zig, this person gets a lot of natural light, this person doesn't get as much.
Right. What's in the room? What's in the room there?
This, I don't know. I kind of had it blocked off, and I was thinking, it could be storage, it could be like mechanical. I know for the for apartment buildings, or multi-unit buildings, that a lot of times the mechanical, like, I don't know, should I assume that each unit has its own mechanical closet, or that you know what I mean, like, or like its own furnace, hot water heater, or does that depend on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they would. I think that, I mean, if it's like a rental scenario, you could probably do with like an InstaHeat hot water heater that kind of hangs on a rack on the wall. Okay. It's electric. The other heat source might just be like a heat pump, like in like the Holiday Inn that you might have stayed at, where it's on the outside wall and it's ventilating the whole unit, because these are really small. That's another option. Maybe it's baseboard electric heat with a condensing unit on the roof that's blowing a high efficiency fan to cool the unit itself. So there's a number of strategies, but I think the heat pump in the outside wall, or Magic Pack, I think that's another version of what that's called, is something that you could look at. But generally they're along the outside wall. This layout is kind of intriguing. The bathroom's pretty big. The bathroom's almost as big as the kitchen.
Yeah, the bathroom is probably the thing that I don't know what a good like minimum size is. I was trying to think of, like having it comfortable enough for a person to move around, but also, I mean, I think it could be shrunk down, definitely, So, I mean, the whole thing could still be shrunk even more, because I've found some examples of some really, really micro apartments where the kitchen is essentially just a small counter with a small sink, and like not even a full-size fridge, So, I mean, I think these could be compressed even a little more. And definitely the bathroom is one place that could afford to take some square footage away. You know, and then yeah, that one on the right ended up with that room in the upper corner, which definitely, you know, could be utilized. There could be the like utility
Right.
closet. And if I bring that wall that the doors are on and I bring it down a bit more and compress, you know, that would definitely help. But I think for me, like right now, looking at the site and determining where the more public spaces, because I know with what we were talking about last week was having, you know, not having like that house, the abandoned house,
Right.
not having it all be private space, having some of it be like public or shared space. So I think now that I've looked a little closer at the site and tried to determine like where the more public areas are, that I can now go back and say, okay, like, and start to really see like how these are going to piece together better. So I don't know.
Can I screen share something with you?
Yeah.
So I am going to go to something called, oops. Are you aware of, can you see this?
Yeah.
Have you seen this piece?
No, I have not.
So this is a young lady that, you know, she has her practice in London, and but she trained at Waterloo, which is, you know, outside of Toronto. It's in Ontario.
Yeah.
And this is a very interesting project that kind of created a rhythm of like units that are very, very small, as you can imagine, right? They're just sort of like one room wide, right? See that? But they created this sort of neighborhood out of them. More of the same. Here's sort of another shot of it. So she's worth looking at. Let me see if we can get her website. Yep. Yeah, her website is worth looking at. But wait a minute, why isn't that's not the one I wanted. Actually, watch the video when you get to her website. It's a very interesting video. And if you look at the units themselves, you know, they're like T units. So this sort of interlocking thing is what she's trying to do. If you look at, I don't know if you can see that on the plan, but it reminds me of your lot shape, and it reminds me of the zig and zag, the sort of nesting thing that you're trying to do here. And then the aerial site plan, then you've seen that image. And then these are the floor plans. And if you look at the floor plans, they're very cozy, right? Here's the T right here.
Yeah.
This is an outdoor space that's kind of shared with, like, that's a demising wall right there. That's kind of shared with, this is a really great set of examples, actually, because you were talking about mechanical. This is storage. That's the washer and dryer, or the mechanical room there, off of the kitchen, right? Library, sitting room, guest room, bathroom, stairs up, and then outdoor patio, and then a living room. And then you go upstairs, this overlooks the first floor, and it's got one bedroom upstairs with a standard bathroom, and that's probably the washer and dryer right in the middle.
Mhm.
You take it up again and you get another bedroom up there. So there are 3 floors, all within a very simple volume, but
Mhm.
they're all open, they're all interconnected, and that diagonal, the being able to see through it this way and being able to see through it diagonally, like in an X, right, produces these kinds of framed views, which is very interesting. Here's one of the like shots from the living room or the kitchen to the terrace,
Mhm.
and you see how the doors open out onto that terrace. Oh, and the rooms aren't flat ceilings, right? Because those top rooms have the slopey roof.
Mhm.
And then the spaces between the units, right, are these outdoor areas. So let's go back up to the plans again, right? The spaces between the units are outdoor areas, like right here. So you get these nice like residual spaces, which are really interesting. So again, she's someone really worth looking hard at. I think this project is really, really strong from like that perspective. This is actually another version of the project. This is actually even smaller.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think what's interesting too is like you talked about that rhythm, like where's the view where you see several of them.
Right.
Well, I had started to think like, you know, even if you had this building that was essentially one mass, to have it broken up like that to kind of like respond to the rhythm of the houses when you're looking at street view, but also, you know, in the aerial view, you can see this rhythm, and there's, you know, definitely to follow that rhythm of the houses that are existing there.
And in that project, if you go to her website, in that project, she's showing 3 different housing types. And one of them is like a multi-story stacked apartment building. So she's able to tell the story in this development with 3 different housing types to promote a graduated sort of agenda of density.
Yeah, definitely.
So I would include her as a case study.
Okay.
A lot of the English, a lot of the Belgian architects have been really interesting because, you know, they confront this question of the architects are doing these suburban buildings because they're also like dealing with the requirement for more density in suburban settings, and also they're kind of backing into these farmland areas that they're up against. So think of Howell, right?
Yeah.
Meets density.
Yeah.
Think of Oxford meeting density. Even even Northville meeting density. Northville's been kind of a good example of that. 3 or 4-story mixed-use buildings with residential in them. It's kind of astounding that they've been able to do that there. Okay, what else do you want to go over?
I don't know. I think I've got a lot to go off of for now. Like I said, I definitely want to, like, you know, obviously keep researching, but I need to, you know, get to the drawing board a bit more and work on the plans more and you know, actually have some documentation of the research a bit more. So, and Judd actually had shared in a document for an editable Word document for all of us, so that we can all kind of like designate what type of research we're doing, so that we're making sure we're not all doing the same types of research. So
good.
So I think that's good. So I kind of said that I'm definitely looking at Muffy and just like urban agriculture, blue and green infrastructure. What else did I say? In residence programs and local food sources. But I definitely, you know, I also said I'm open to if there's something that's more specific or that's more broad that could be useful to everybody, that I'd be willing to look into
Cool.
other stuff too. So, but yeah, so I plan to start to compile what I have found and share it with everybody so that they can hopefully, because I know there were others that were interested in Muffy and
Sure.
the areas around it. So
But
I think
even if there's overlap and duplication, I think everyone's going to bring to it maybe their own orientation, their own kind of focus.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, I'm going to move on then.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Who's next? Okay, Nate, can you give me about 5 minutes? I'm hearing the dogs bark. I got to see what's going on. I'll be right back. Thanks.
So is anybody else going tonight, or is it just me? Just checking.
I think it's just gonna end up being you.
Okay. You guys might want to discreetly drop out while we're talking then.
Did Mateo didn't say, he was texting me and Nate, but he didn't say whether he was.
He's texting? I didn't even hear my phone.
Oh, you didn't see the text? He had said, has anybody offered to go? I was basically like, no, sorry.
Oh, you know what? I must have accidentally turned my phone off in my pocket somehow. I guess I sat on a button. I don't know. It's
I mean, is he still gonna try to go then this evening or not?
He didn't say to me.
What
so.
exactly happened to him?
I don't know. I don't know what happens. Find out.
oh,
Mark, instead of like hiding it.
What?
Should we just
What?
tell Mark that, I mean, I can't go and Judd can't go this evening, but we haven't heard from Mateo, so
Yeah.
well, all four of you said you weren't ready to go, so.
yes.
Okay, Nate, I'm back.
All right. Does that mean we're ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what did we left off with last week, talking about maybe looking into what had been on that set of properties in the past, right? Sanborn maps. What else did I write down?
Were we going to hook up on that? I forgot.
We were going to, but you don't need to unless you have something from 1950 or 1960.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get into that here in a second. Let me screen share. All right, so this is what we were looking at last week, right?
Right.
And I had decided that I was going to take a look at this block right here. So what I did was I found 4 years of the Sanborn maps that seemed useful. I couldn't find anything from 1950 or 60, which is what I was really, it's kind of a hole that I'm trying to fill, but I just haven't been able to find a Sanborn map record from that year set yet. But they go up all the way to 2006. 1987 I found at the Library of Congress. These three I found at the Detroit Public Library.
Brilliant.
The fact that I don't have something from like mid-1950s to 1964 or something like that is kind of killing me.
Yeah, it's got to be maddening. Let me see if I can look that up at the office.
So anyway, so we know when the block started, right? And interestingly enough, this unit right here is one of the buildings that's still left on the site.
Yeah.
So we have a pre-1897 building on
Wow.
that property set. So that building is really, really old. It's like 130, 140 years now, right? Or am I just doing math stupidly in my head?
No, that's pretty accurate. You can balance my checkbook.
So yeah, that's pretty incredible, actually, I think.
Also, I know that these are not dynamic viewports right now, right? But like the stuff on Bobian, right, is really interesting.
Yeah, what's going on right here?
Yes, sir.
And actually, as we move through the years, it extends up to Hamlin and up to my set too. So let's keep going here. 1915, we're filling in a little bit, and from this you can see that Bethune is kind of becoming the primary for this.
Yeah, because they
And
have all
Custer
those
is-
frontages, right?
And Custer is secondary, but that changes very quickly, and it kind of becomes both. So right here, we've got a drugstore, some sort of miscellaneous retail, a bakery, and 2 more retail stores. So there's 5 different retail here, and all of these are 2-story. So I'm thinking that they might be some sort of like live-work units
Sure.
or something like that.
Yeah, and you can
So-
see the stairways going up in the back.
And if you start looking at the addresses here, it's pretty dense. There's dual units. They're all 2-story, 2.5-story. And then, well, what's really interesting is what happens once you get to 1921. These units that were two, like this got converted into a quad. This got converted into a quad.
Right.
This one's a double, I think. So this magically turned into a nightclub. I'm not really sure how that happened, but and then over here, this house is gone, and we've got more retail and a gas station now, which surprised me. And what's interesting down here is what used to be on this Muffy property.
Oh my God, it's an apartment building.
It's a giant one. This is a 3-story building. Isn't that incredible? Like, that surprised me. So we know why it's so empty.
And another filling station.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might be part of the same owner, just because the proximity, but maybe not. Yeah, so this sort of density just continued, a little bit less so, but. And then we skip 1960s when, like 1950 to 1960, when Detroit was at its peak, which kind of, I wish I had that year right now, but, and then by the 1980, they've already started demolishing buildings, which I guess doesn't surprise me, but, and then we move on to what we have today. Here we go. So our giant apartment complex is gone. All these commercial units turned into a parking lot, presumably for this church over here. Commercial's gone. It's all residential now. I don't have a record of this building at all, so it must be fairly recent.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't look like it's much more than 1940, right?
This one? Well,
Yeah.
it's not in the maps at all. I didn't see it as far as I could tell. Let me go back here. Let me see.
It's really Bethune.
Like, it's not here in 1980. It's it's showing.
No, it's got to be there. That's got to be it.
Oh no, it must be this.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like it was a residential unit then.
What does the F
Flat.
stand for?
Flat.
Flat, of course.
Still kind of arbitrary because they're calling
Those flats.
dwellings.
Yeah. I guess flat is just like a 2-story unit, one on top of the other.
Yeah.
I'm knocked out by the Royal Court.
I know, I was so surprised when I saw that. I was like, wow. Like, so the amount of density that was in this area, I just did a quick count when you started talking about density in the preliminary lecture, and my particular lot here is about an acre, the units that I chose to look at. And between I counted 25 residential units, 7 2-story retail units, and then the gas station. So we're at like 34 units in this acre, which is
That's good.
pretty dense.
But
a lot
it's,
more dense
it's
than
really
I thought.
it achieved that density by virtue of the Royal whatever, Royal Court, Royal Palms, whatever that's
Oh.
called. I wonder if we can see a picture of that. Maybe Wayne State has a picture of that building in an archive.
They might. I did a quick
I mean,
Google
but you
search
know
and I couldn't
exactly
find
what
it.
it looks like, right? It's
Yeah.
dark brick with limestone, and it's got an entry court, I
3
mean,
stories.
bay windows.
It probably was a relatively beautiful building because
I'm
most
sure
of
it
these
was.
homes are just giant. Like
They're
this one
huge.
that's still here, 3-car garage. So whoever was living in this pre-1897 building was very affluent to own 3 cars, you know.
But it also looks like the flat next to it at the 434 lot.
Yeah. Well, this has got 2 people living in it too.
But I mean, the one next to the 1897 one.
Oh yeah, this
It
looks like
almost
some
looks
sort
like
of
the
a
same
shed.
plan.
Similar anyway.
I love how they say ventilated. See that?
Veneered.
Oh,
Is what it-
veneered. Sorry, you're right.
I had to look it up because I didn't know how to read these maps, and I
So
was
what
seeing
is
all
the
this
electric,
information.
WH?
Where's the WH?
Okay, so go to the big 3 in the middle of the drawing, and then go south to the box. It says 1 electrical
Oh,
water heater. No, with
you know, I didn't actually look that up, but I just assumed it was like a shed for somebody to do like a shop for
sure.
like working.
Yeah, sure.
That's what I was assuming. 1 electrical WHO. Huh. I mean, I can do a quick Google on it later
I'm sure.
and figure it
That's
out.
very interesting.
Mhm.
So maybe share, Nate, the locations of these Sanborns with everyone, so people can find their own pieces of land and begin to sort of understand the trajectory of development, type, and size, shape, and then the sort of trajectory of loss, right? That 1897 map is just cracking me up, though. How big are those? Can you zoom in on the ones on Custer?
Custer.
Yeah, they're fairly small. No, the ones like 58, 54. Those are small units.
1.5, 1 story, 1.5 stories.
Yeah.
But they get bigger, I think. Oh, nope, never mind. They looks like they stay the same.
Yeah.
They get demolished after a while. The people who are living here probably got priced out of the area.
I'm sure, or they just, I mean, they just became rentals for the families that couldn't afford to live anywhere else but there. And
yeah, so
brilliant.
that brings us to today, and there's 3 buildings left.
Mm-hmm.
This was a duplex. I think it's got converted to a 1-person unit now. 419 still a duplex. 438 pre-1897.
But 419 is still the only unit that faces Custer, right?
No. Well, it's the only unit that faces Custer now.
In that block, right?
In 1921, in the 1921 picture, there was actually a pretty significant amount of units facing that direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we had some. And then we had some commercial over here too, because this got reconverted into
a separate store next to the nightclub.
Yeah. So
this block is very unusual because it has these should be, there should be a laneway, there should be an alley there. These should be different lots, and they're not. I'm totally knocked out by this Sanborn map.
Yes, it's really interesting, isn't it? So let's move forward. I did some more property analysis after that. Let's see how quickly I can move through it here.
Okay.
So then we're here.
Right.
So I was looking at all of these units. Every single one of these qualifies under the small lot portion of the zoning ordinance in Detroit, except for this one right here.
Right.
It's just over the 7,000 requirement for R3,
Oh, man.
and it's it's
It's
yeah,
totally unbuildable.
yeah. This one is anyway, at least according to the zoning ordinance. So yeah, I was looking at I color coded what was there, and the buildings that are still there, I shaded them in. I've got the property dimensions here, the square footages of the lots. This one's a pre-1915 single family now, pre-1897 single family, 3-car garage, and we've got this duplex here. Brush is now a one-way, and so is Beaubien. What else did I put on here? I wrote down the 5,000. Oh, it's 5,000 square feet, but it's over
For
that.
that, for 450, yeah.
So here's the rules here. Small lots are relatively arbitrary, so that could give us some leeway if we reorganize how the lot properties work.
Mhm.
It only allows 1 unit per lot, so it's only single family. But so that's the one thing that's killing me. But
Right.
there's no size limit to how small these properties can be. So it requires 350 square feet minimum of open space, grass, essentially. And they cannot be directly connected via townhome style. They have to be single family separate units. So there has to be like 5 feet in between the house.
Right.
That was my reading of the intent of small lots.
Right.
So when I was looking through this, the first possible solution that I saw was to separate or combine lots as I deem necessary to modify the properties to increase the density that's allowable, or to accomplish what we want to accomplish while still maintaining zoning compliance under the small lot ordinance. And then the other thing was I was looking at the planned unit development ordinance.
Right.
I assume that is what you did for Brush Park, correct?
Yeah. So a planned unit development, as you know, is a complete zoning classification change. It in effect is spot zoning, to put it in kind of simple parlance. But what it does is it allows a developer to unitize several lots into one lot that has one overall zoning classification that's aligned with the vision or master plan of that neighborhood. And it allows the city to enter into a contract with the developer for, well, program, open space, parking, building height, material. Basically, a developer in a PUD scenario designs the whole thing, obviously in collaboration with and in support of the planning department, designs the whole thing as one thing, as one block, and creates a vision of density, because that's what the city is wanting to see there, for example, that is far denser than what could be allowed by simply developing the land as it is currently zoned today, because it's better for the neighborhood to achieve this kind of density, for example. Pardon me. So the PUD, the planned unit development, is, I think, basically how everyone would go about doing this stuff this term if you were to move forward. But it requires the ownership of all of that land, which is another layer of madness and complexity that's kind of seeping into everyone's conversation. Like even earlier tonight, Nate was talking about how the land bank owns this, a real estate developer owns that, and a private developer or a private homeowner owns that. So in a PUD, we kind of have to say, okay, let's say all bets are off. And for the benefit of this educational, this academic experience, I'm going to take the whole block, regardless of who currently owns it. And the way it gets developed is based on this PUD assumption.
I think that's the route that I'm going to have to take, because if you take a look at this building right here, according to that website that was shared with everybody, this guy owns this entire corner right here. Yeah. Even though he's only got this portion of it fenced in.
Right.
and he's up to date with his taxes on it. So yeah, he owns it, and it's his.
Is that the
These
guy
two
that has
are-
the junkyard at 444?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
all
He owns.
fenced in?
Yeah, he it's all fenced in for those two properties, and then he owns all 4 of those.
And that's actually one of the oldest parcels in North End, right?
On this street right here,
Yeah.
this building is like one of the oldest. It's the oldest on the parcel that I'm looking at.
Wow.
And it's honestly, it's probably one of the first that started to, once the North End started to expand, because this pre-1921 map, it doesn't go any further than Smith, and
Wow.
it stops at Smith, and I don't even think Smith was named Smith at that time. I think it was Hamlin or something, or maybe it was Custer that was Bethune was Hamlin.
Yeah, it was. It changed its name. You know, this was all part of Hamtramck. This whole neighborhood was really became part of Detroit when Detroit annexed it from
Mhm.
Hamtramck. If you've ever driven down I-75, you probably say, "Oh, well, Hamtramck's on the east side of Woodward," or I'm sorry, east side of. Oh, this is a great map. It's on the east side of I-75, but actually, there's pockets of it along Oakland that are in the west side of I-75.
Where am I? Hold
So
on,
there's
where am I?
Hamlin and Custer. Yeah, your building is the only one there.
Yeah, so you can, yeah, it stops at Smith. Detroit didn't go any further past Smith at that point. At least the map didn't. Actually, I think the Detroit boundary was at Grand Boulevard, but this map went out a few blocks more.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is like it was just getting built up, like 1890s at this point.
And Dolores Bennett Park is
One.
what lot would that have been again?
Right here, number 1.
Yeah.
So this entire thing.
Yeah, of course. It was south of Smith.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Not every house had a garage on the alley, too.
Well, this is 1897. This is pre-Ford.
Yeah.
So, you know, garages didn't necessarily weren't required at that time. So I'm thinking that maybe Hamlin was introduced before that time, and I don't know. Well, whatever.
Hamlin's a pretty wide road, right? I mean, it's bigger than Custer.
At this point, yes.
What a terrific map.
There's fire hydrants here, though, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. So this goes back to a question that Mariah was asking. You can see the property lines in front of these houses, but you're not seeing the street. But obviously the fire hydrant is not in the street. It's off of the street in the right of way. So that road may have only been, 18 or 19 feet wide. Or maybe it was 27 feet wide. Even then, we don't know exactly, but
well, these things are only partially to scale. This is actually one of the best maps. That it's funny how
this is a terrific map.
Yeah, it's funny how the oldest one was one of the best ones.
Yeah,
because this one's like clearly carefully drawn, colored in.
Yeah,
this was a very good map. Once you get to the 1920s. It starts to become a little bit more careless with its creation. So, like they weren't even using rulers anymore. so this isn't to scale at all. I just had to just sort of eyeball it when I was drawing those shaded buildings. Like this, I just sort of eyeballed it.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's funny how the oldest one was actually.
What is that big building at Woodward and Marston? Is that the church?
This is we're way north. I just arbitrarily chose one. I didn't.
Sure.
This is Mount Vernon. This is a Metropolitan Church. Yeah, so that's what I did over the weekend.
Brilliant.
And I think the next steps is to just start looking at what we could possibly do with the
Mhm.
property. And I think that I proceed under the assumption that I've accumulated all of these properties.
Yeah, and that's sort of when we were talking with Nate earlier, that the idea of a myth or a mythology. What is the storyline? I think that's what you have to do here, and I mean, and make it plausible. But I mean, no one in a graduate studio assumes that you own the land or that you know somebody that does own the land. But you know, the idea in this case would be, I think, to take the whole lot and juggle the sort of dual street front that you have on Bethune and Custer. I mean, I think that creates a very interesting challenge for you.
Yeah, I've got a couple ideas, but I need to draw it first, you know.
Okay. Very cool. So I like what you've done, and I appreciate the trajectory. Let me, maybe remind me, send me a note tomorrow or tonight, and I'll look at it tomorrow. Maybe the years that you're dragging, put that in the email as well, and maybe we've got that at the office. We've got a huge stack of these Sanborn maps, but I don't know for what years we have them.
Yeah, well, when I was looking at these things, there's just a giant stack doesn't necessarily mean it's full. I went to the Lawrence Tech Library, and Lawrence Tech actually has a partially complete Sanborn map from like 1996, I think, and it is a stack that's like it's like 2 or 3 feet tall of paper.
Wow.
And it's half complete. It's missing half the map. So these things are huge. So, I mean, you can look, but I'd be surprised if you found it.
Okay,
to be honest.
I'll look. Yeah, just send it along, and I'll share what I can, and then make sure the others in our studio have like the links and the locations, and you know, they can maybe help. They can find their own sites. I think that would be very, very informative for them.
Yeah,
I have a deep love of maps personally, so I mean, I think they're just so interesting. They're kind of an attempt to make a factual history, right? And yet, as you've noted, they are inherently flawed. You know, when you know, because that's just the way it is. There's like some information that's recorded and some information that's not. How do we know that what was left out wasn't important? That's the beauty of it. Cool.
Yeah, so I think I've got a 4-day weekend coming up. So hopefully come Monday I'll have a significant amount of work.
Cool. Well, don't get sick, okay?
I'll do my best.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it for now.
Very good. Thanks, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
Have a good night.
Yep.
Who's next? I know that somebody wasn't scheduled for tonight, but could somebody go tonight? Zach or Mariah? Judd?
I honestly don't have done everything that I wanted to show you for Wednesday.
Okay.
I had another assignment that was more pressing over the weekend.
Gotcha. So we'll pass it. And I think you made the swap last week anyway. So we'll make sure that we talk on Wednesday night, Mariah.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm currently driving home from work.
That's not going to work, Judd.
I would have a difficult time right now, and I need a little more time to prepare, to be honest.
Okay, so we'll talk on Wednesday night as well. Maybe we'll just do 3 on Wednesday, and then I'll just try to set up like a Saturday session with Mateo. Probably he'll hate me for this when the U of M game is playing, so he can't do both. Okay.
They're 5-0, so he's not going to miss much. They'll probably dominate again.
Oh yeah, I think that's probably a safe thing to assume. All right, thanks everybody. You all have a good night then.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Bye.